Welcome everyone to another episode in the series Unlearning the Falsehoods. I think we have come so far. It is I'm not sure 28th or 29th episode. By the way, we have this is the 101th video on our YouTube channel. So it started off as just something that I used to react live to the headlines. But now we have transformed it into a medium through which you can at least acquaint yourself or familiarize yourself with the lies and the falsehoods that were told to us in our history textbooks. So yes, we have finished 100 a total of 100 videos on YouTube. It's not a very big achievement, but yes, a significant achievement for us because it started off as just an Instagram page. Now we have significant content on Instagram, on X, and on YouTube as well. Having said that, so far we have covered that initially there was an alliance of convenience and mutual benefit between the people of the book, that is the Christians and the Muslims. Now, after having annulled or undone the partition of Bengal, there was a friction between the people of the book as well. Okay, it had introduced this element of suspicion in the Muslim mind that the British indeed cannot be trusted wholeheartedly. There has to be some check. Okay, they also need some sort of a leverage on the British to arm twist them into doing their own bidding. All right. Something that is largely ignored in our history textbooks is, let me take back to your school days. Okay, think about it. Exactly were you taught about World War One? How did it start? Somebody assassinated an archduke. Some Serbian guy assassinated an archduke and hence started the First World War. Do you really think so? An assassinated started a world war. Such things, such events of such magnitude do not start simply by just assassinating someone. If that was the reason, don't you think there were assassinations prior to that or even post that? Let's look at the contemporary history. There have been many assassination attempts on many American presidents. There have been successful assassinations of many people in the West Asian region, even in the European region as well. So, such a war on such a large scale cannot be assumed to have begun just simply by one assassination. Okay, prior to First World War, there were Balkan Wars. Okay, we don't talk about this much because Balkan Wars had a religious color to it. In essence, Balkan Wars, they were fighting against Islam. The Christian countries, the remaining Christian countries of Europe, um, they were fighting against the spread of another monotheistic tradition. I've already covered this sufficiently, and so far, you don't need to be a historian or a PhD in history or an expert in international relations and politics and whatnot. Okay, there was and there is still currently a competition between both the people of the book, that is the Christianity and Islam. Both of them want to have more and more converts to their side. We as pagans do not even figure in that equation. All right, so our history textbooks tell us that World War One started with the assassination of an archduke, which clearly was not the case. It was some lie that was fed to us, so we will buy into it, and the build-up of narrative on that starts. Okay, so prior to the First World War, there were Balkan wars going on. Balkan countries of Serbia and I guess it was Bulgaria. Serbia was the prominent one. Serbia and Bulgaria and all those Balkan countries, they invaded Turkey. Okay, why did they invade Turkey? Because Turkey was the center of the Islamic Caliphate. Okay, the stated aim of this takeover was rise of Christianity. So indeed, there was some friction going on outside of Bharat between both the monotheistic traditions, who inside of Bharat were competing as well to win more and more converts to their side. Okay, so clearly we were just bystanders, and whatever that was happening to us clearly had its origin outside of our country. So British, what happened was, uh, British, they helped Italy to conquer or to take over uh, Tripoli. Tripoli is a port in Libya. Okay, all the in northern African region. So all these wars, Balkan wars, and all the taking over of Islamic territories was going on. This was not taken very well by the Muslim community in Bharat. Okay, we have discussed this. Just as the English coloniality has been entrenched into us by our into our consciousness. Okay, similarly, Islamic coloniality has also been entrenched into us. And when I say us, I mean the converted pagans who have chosen the way of Islam over our way of life. Okay, the pagan way of life. Let's say it as pagan way of life. Okay, so that coloniality is still at work, and we conveniently ignore this. Our history textbooks conveniently ignore this. In fact, our history textbooks talk nothing about coloniality or colonial consciousness. All right, so yes, while they were taking over, now what happened was, number one was, already the Muslims, they were miffed about undoing of the partition, because that was something that was promised to them and that was again taken away by the British. And on top of that, the British army was helping French and other forces to take over the Islamic territories in West Asian region and the North African region. And on top of that, there were the Balkan wars, whereby the Christian countries of Serbia and all those countries, they took over Turkey and all the surrounding countries that were associated with the Islamic Caliphate. So all these factors played into the mind of the Muslims, they were convinced that they do need some bargaining chip. The trust that was based on them being the people of the book, and hence the Christians and Muslims are natural allies, it dawned upon them that they need a bargaining chip. And what was the other political front available as a bargaining chip? Yes, you are right. The moderates of the Congress. Okay, we'll discuss that further, but right now we'll focus on. There was a session. There was a session of 1912 of the Muslim League, wherein an individual by Haider Khan, he gave an opening speech. Let's hear what he had to say in the 1912 session of the Muslim League in the opening, as an opening speech. Okay, this is Haider Khan speaking. The Muslim community all over the world is passing through very stirring times. Coming events are casting their shadows before them, and the whole Muslim world waits on the tiptoe of expectation to see what the womb of future has in store for us. Okay, so here he is appealing to the sentiment of the Muslims that you indeed are connected with, your locus of identity is outside of Bharat. Okay, meaning, all their sentiments, all their emotions, like I said, the locus of identity is outside of Bharat. Even though by nationality, by culture, by tradition, they might belong to the motherland of Bharat, but since now they have been converted, now they have forcefully accepted the way of Islam, their locus of identity has shifted outside in the regions of West Asia. Okay, so this is him appealing to that sentiment. Now let's, like I said, in October 1912, Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro, they successfully allying against the Ottoman Empire, which resulted in the loss of territory for the latter. Meaning, all these Christian countries, they came together and took over Islamic territories. So here, like, what are we talking about? Both these monotheistic traditions, right from the very beginning, they were indulged in this competition of winning more and more territories, and by that, by that logic, after they win these territories, they'll convert the inhabitants of that land to their faith to justify and legitimize their claim of being the topmost monotheistic tradition. Okay, so these were the events that were going on parallelly while in our country we were fighting for the British independence, from independence from the British. All right. But something that I want you to focus on is there was a society that was established, a Red Crescent Society in Calcutta and London, to collect funds for Turkey. Okay, so here Funds were being collected. Politically, the one specific community was uniting for a cause that was outside. Why? Because now their locus of identity was rooted outside of Bharat, not within Bharat. Okay. Now, these things were parallelly going on, but there was also a rude awakening for the British as well. Okay, they were operating under the assumption that right after undoing the partition, um, the revolutionary fervor in Bengal or the revolutionary spirit in the Bengal might have come down, but that was clearly not the case. What happened on 23rd December 1912 was two particular individuals, Basanta Kumar Biswas and Rash Bihari Bose. Okay, these two again attempted assassination on one of the viceroys. Let me find out who that viceroy was. Hardinge. Okay, they tried to assassinate him with a bomb, but he survived. His people from his entourage were injured. Okay, Basanta Kumar Biswas was jailed and transported for life. Rash Bihari Bose, he escaped to Japan. Okay, he escaped to Japan. He was never to be found again. And later on, he will join forces with Subhash Chandra Bose and help him set up the national army. Okay, so he escapes to Japan. Now, what will happen is, and I'll obviously prove this in the video with evidences, literary evidences, is right after the Muslim League realized that British, although the Christians being the people of the book, they cannot be trusted. Meaning, because like I have mentioned in the previous part of this video, there were three instances that appealed to this feeling of animosity inside the Muslims against the Christians. Okay, number one was the Balkan Wars. The Christian nations were taking over Islamic nations. Number two was undoing of the partition of Bengal. Okay, again, number three was British. Okay, they helped the Italian and the French. The French and the British, they helped Italy take over Libya as a colony. Libya was again an Islamic country at that time. So all these events, they sowed these seeds of doubt in the minds of Muslims that the Christians indeed cannot be trusted. So now what was, they felt this need of having a bargaining chip, okay, to control or at least have some leverage over the British to extract their own demands. Okay, now that leverage is going to come from Congress, more specifically the moderates. All right, so let's see, there was a Congress session in Bankipur. Bankipur is a place in Bihar. There was a Congress session held in December 1912. Let's read some of the statements, okay, that were made in this Bankipur, Bihar. Here, okay, this who is speaking, this is Mazhar ul Haq. Mazhar ul Haq, he was a member of the Muslim League and Congress as well. Okay, so he had a foot in both the camps, meaning on the one hand he was advocating Muslim interests, on the other hand he was also a member of the Congress, masquerading as a secular. Okay, so let's see what he had to say. These are the extracts from his speech. These are his words. Let's see what he had to say. Then came the greatest blow to the prestige of Islam, the invasion of the seat of its caliphate by the Balkan states. He's talking about the Balkan War, like Christian nations taking over Islamic nations. While Turkey was still fighting Italy, she was treacherously attacked on all sides. If the belligerents had fought purely for territory, the war would not have produced any visible effect upon the Muslims of India. But these Christian states openly preached a crusade against Islam. It was not a war against the Turks, but a war to turn Muslims out of Europe, a war between the Asiatics and the Europeans, a war between the cross and the crescent. Then the feelings of the Muslim world rose in indignation against the perpetrators of this outrage upon humanity and their religion. It is to be regretted that most of the responsible ministers of the British government, including the Prime Minister, gave vent to their feelings, which clearly showed their intolerance of Islam. Mr. Ackwitz, in his Guildhall speech, referred to Salonika as the gateway through which Christianity had spread in Europe, and expressed his pleasure that it was once more in the hand of a Christian power. There was not a word of regret at the humiliation of England's old ally Turkey, not a word of sympathy with the Muslim world, but a hope that Constantinople, that is Istanbul, itself might fall and be cleared of the presence of the hated Turk. Read the speeches of Lloyd George, Churchill, Masterman, and Ackland, and you will find the same exultant tone at the expulsion of the followers of Islam from Europe. This attitude of the British ministers deeply offended the sentiments and wounded the religious feelings of 70 million of Muslim subjects of His Imperial Majesty in India. So here is stating that since even the political leaders, not just in Bharat, even back home in UK, they were speaking in parliaments, their speeches were written down, and he's referring to those speeches where the prime ministers and all the leaders, they were referring to their victory as a Christian victory. Okay, now I'm appealing to your reason. Think about what what repercussions these things might have back home on the political movements in Bharat. Okay, all these things were conveniently hidden to us in the form of secularizing our history. Okay, I'm simply just putting it out there for you to be your own judge. I'm simply appealing to your reason. If indeed there existed a syncretic relationship between the pagans and the Muslims in Bharat, what is this then? What are all these people saying? Weren't Churchill, Lloyd George, Ackland, weren't all these people aware of it? Again, appeal to your own reason. All these resources are available on the internet. A simple Google form will fetch you the PDF. You can print it out or read it online. All right. Now, next, what happened was this clearly sowed the seed of mistrust in the Muslims that indeed this competition is still going on. The idea that they are going to align and form an alliance to corner the pagan and hence they can figure out how will we convert the rest of them had clearly come to an abrupt end. The Muslims were rudely awakened to the fact that indeed the competition between the two monotheistic faiths on the international level is still going on. Okay, so like I said, they needed a bargaining chip. On top of that, back home there were certain events that still added or accentuated their mistrust that Muslims had on the Christians. Okay, so there was a mosque named Machli Bazar Mosque in Kanpur. Okay, it was illegally constructed and some parts of it were demolished to make way for a new highway that was going to build over there. The British demolished it. There were some protests by the Muslim members of the community. British shot at them. 25 of them died. Again, this inflamed the sentiments. All right. So yeah, all these things were adding to the mistrust that the Muslim League had on the British. All right. Okay. So in the meanwhile, while all these things were going on, Congress deliberations, there were negotiations going on between the Muslim League and the Congress. Why? Simply because they needed a bargaining chip or a leverage over the British. Up until now, they were living under this impression that they'll not need a strong ally to control the pagan, but now they were at the doorsteps of the pagan to seek their alliance to control the British. Funny how politics changes the dynamics of friendship, isn't it? So yes, by this time there was after the Second Balkan War came to an end. There were many Balkan wars. Okay, majority of them, if you go by the scale, there were two Balkan wars, and they came to an end in 1913. Okay, so by this time, the Muslims, they were pretty much convinced that the British cannot be trusted. Okay, so here comes this idea of aligning with the Congress. Now, people, usually historians and many mainstream media channels, like to quote this as an example of a syncretic culture, something that I have disapproved completely in my previous videos. But let's unpack and consider this idea for a moment. It is said that since Muslim League formed a pact with Congress, this is widely quoted in public debates and in public discourse, even political discourse, that This is the proof that there existed some syncretic culture between the pagans and the Muslims of Bharat. Okay, consider this. Consider this. Okay, you have a friend. All right, you have a friend who comes to you when they need something from you. Would you call them a friend? In contrast, you have an individual, okay, you have an individual who will come to you or support you in your acts and in your pursuits and whatnot, but they don't need anything in return. They'll support you unconditionally and regardless. Which one is a true ally or a true friend? Obviously, the second one. Okay, the Muslim League came to Congress when they needed something, in return. Okay, the pagan alliance to um, to arm twist and to have a leverage over the British. So how exactly is this syncretic culture? They came to us when they needed something, and what exactly was Congress getting out of it? Okay, let's put that argument aside, that it was indeed like I said, it was indeed pretty convenient for Muslims to come to Congress and appeal to this brotherhood between pagans and Muslims in Bharat at that time. It was pretty convenient because they were working towards the goal of securing their alliance to control the British. Okay, so that was what the Muslim League was getting out of it. What exactly was Congress getting out of it? Something for you to think about. So, just to give you a primer in that direction, what exactly was Congress getting out of it? More votes. They'll get more votes to consolidate their image as being a pan Bharat political body for the entire populace of Bharat, which clearly is not the case. And this begins the era of appeasement politics by the Congress. To this very day, it continues. Okay, just in lieu of some votes, they appease a certain community, and this is where it started. Okay, whereas clearly from the other sides, they were pretty clear. As long as it satisfies our interest, we will be in mutual alliance with the pagan. The moment it ceases to serve our purpose, we are again back to friction. Okay, too bad our leaders, our well educated and literate and English speaking leaders, were not able to see this political move. Okay, to this very day, that particular political party continues to behave in that particular manner. It is what it is. Okay, on the other hand, something interesting might also intrigue or spark your curiosity is the moderates in Congress. They were in support of the war that Britain was undertaking, something that Muslim League opposed. You see how politics work. If Congress indeed was fighting for sovereignty and independence, why exactly was it supporting its wars outside the geographical boundaries of Bharat when Muslim League was opposing it? And on top of that, there was an alliance between Muslim League and Congress as well. Okay, so you clearly see there was this political struggle. It wasn't an independence or independence movement. It was clearly a political struggle for usurping the power. The Congress, the Muslim League have become power hungry when they saw what this model of democracy can do. Okay, so clearly it was all political game, a political maneuver. There wasn't exactly a spirit of independence going on. The only spirit of independence, arguably, the only spirit of independence for which someone was fighting, and I would argue that is the nationalist faction within the Congress and the revolutionaries outside the Congress. These were the two fronts that were fighting British for complete and absolute sovereignty. Otherwise, the moderates, the Muslim League, they were indulging in these political games and maneuvering to secure power. Like I said, there were many members of the Congress. Okay, there were many members of the Congress who there were many members of the Muslim League who were also members of the Congress. What does this tell you? Okay, on the one side, they were taking care of their religious interests. On the other side, they were masquerading as people who were supporting secularism. Okay, so after a lot of negotiations and after back and forth, there was a deal that was forged out between the Muslim League and the Congress. We like to call it as Lucknow Pact. Okay, clearly there are, there are multiple materials available on the internet, multiple history textbooks that talk about the Lucknow Pact. Not the history textbooks, NCERT textbooks, obviously. They are notoriously famous for telling you only one side of the story. But if you really want to read Lucknow Pact and all the details related to it, there are PDFs available on the internet. You can actually print it out and read it. You will clearly see that the cost that the Congress paid in exchange for, winning over Muslims to their side is clearly disproportionate to what they stood to gain from it. Okay, they gave away a lot of concessions to Muslim. One of the concessions was that if indeed there was a policy that was going to be implemented, if 3/4 of the Muslim community opposes it, then you cannot move ahead with that law, legislation of that law. Okay, so clearly the moderates in the Congress paid a very heavy price just to secure the votes of the Muslim League, or just to secure the support from that particular community. To this very day, they continue with the same dynamics of politics, although their methods might have changed. But to this very day, that is the template of Congress politics. Okay, it is widely available on the internet. You don't need to take my word for it. Do your own research, and that is the whole purpose of this series that I'm undertaking, is to you know at least push you to take down your own research, because whatever that is being taught in the name of education is clearly, for the lack of a better word, bullshit. All right, so yes, to end this video, we will so it was very widely established that Congress was being misled by the moderates. Muslims were fighting for their own interests. Okay, they were fighting to form a state power, whereas Congress, they were fighting for these delusional ideas of secularism, liberty, and equality. Okay, they clearly weren't fighting for the pagan interests. They were fighting for secular idea. They were under this delirious thoughts that India was a country, a secular country, where each and every individual was living in perfect harmony and perfect, synchronization between all the communities, which clearly was not case. Clearly was not the case. We'll further unpack these ideas in the further episode of this series. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching.